Hey everyone, and welcome to another rapid fire review, this time for Shift Up's Stellar Blade. Before Stellar Blade, Shift Up was best known for its gacha mobile game, Project Nike. This is where they honed their particular style for character design. Now to get it out of the way, I actually do not give a shit about any of the culture war stuff surrounding this game, or any other game. I don't seek out or avoid games based on how the character models look. So what I will say is, if you only care about an inordinate amount of wiggles and jiggles on characters who are fighting damn near naked and in heels, look no further because this game has everything that you want. Now, if you are looking to avoid games at all costs that have women inexplicably in lingerie, this one probably isn't for you. But if you're like the majority of people who aren't on Twitter, who can simply roll their eyes when a game gets extra horny, you're in for a treat, because Stellar Blade is actually good underneath it all. I'm going to start with the star of the show. And no, not the boobies. The combat and the gameplay, which is for me the most important aspect of this type of game. I've mentioned in previous reviews that if the combat feels good, I will play a Souls-like or hardcore action RPG, or whatever you want to call them, pretty much about anything. The gameplay here starts simply. A basic attack and a strong attack that can be used individually or strung together in a variety of combos. You have a health bar and a shield bar, and a powerful combo starting dash attack to close the distance. Then they add up to 4 beta attacks to choose from. Special attacks that can fit certain situations for big damage that require a buildup of the beta gauge, which you can get from normal attacks or from parrying blows. Speaking of which, the parry system allows the players to test their timing, but will require you to stop staring at Eve's butt to even attempt to time the massively off-speed blows coming down. If done right, you avoid damage, you build some stagger, and charge the beta points, setting up more big damage. There's also a dodge system that lets you just simply get out of the way of attacks, or is the only escape from a variety of telegraphed special moves. Doing so fills the burst meter, which fuels burst attacks. Again, 4 special attacks to choose from, depending on the situation. Then, towards the end of the game, there's even another gauge that you get that can be filled, allowing Eve to transform and gain a whole slew of new abilities to use in dire situations. Now, it seems like a lot, but the integration of the moves and abilities is done gradually, so I never felt overwhelmed by the options. I always knew what moves to do and when. It was just a matter of making sure my hands and controller cooperated. There are several skill trees allowing you to upgrade the special moves, increase defensive capabilities, add new combo strings, and a robust training system, which is accessible from this menu, which I absolutely loved. This is one of a small handful of quality of life additions that I think the game deserves some praise for. There's a rechargeable tumbler potion thing, very much like a Souls flask, that heals health and recharges upon rest. Though if you're like me, you'll end up with more flasks than you'll ever need. The game doesn't really wheedle you away slowly over many small battles. It pretty much kills you all in one go. The damage potential of bosses or groups of enemies is very high, and there are few reliable windows to drink a potion without getting flattened. You have one starting and eventually a second exospine to alter how Eve performs in battle, and up to 4 gear slots for more stat increases. None of these are so drastic that it'll feel like a different playstyle, but for people wanting to play more defensively or offensively, there are options at least. And then there's the drone. It starts out being just a companion. It scans the landscape to help you find the doodads or things to jump onto, but it eventually becomes your ranged weapon with a variety of ammunition and damage types. And then, of course, there are the non-stat altering costumes. Most of these are just Eve fighting as close to naked as I'm sure Sony would allow. You have bondage gear, bikinis, schoolgirl-esque stuff, but for people who again may not be seeking that, there are a few more reasonable outfits or just the amazing bearsuit to play in. So now that you have all of these abilities and gear, the world is filled with monsters to attack. There's a fair variety of them, all with their own movesets and timings to learn. You won't exactly need to keep notes of their combos to avoid. Most of the moves in the game are telegraphed honestly enough to get through the encounters, even if you have to heal a bit. And if they do get you, the game is very generous with the save points scattered around the world in case things don't go so well. The bosses and mini-bosses have crazy designs, cool moves to learn, and all finish with a neat, murderous cutscene, which make the encounters feel satisfying. I do think there's a minor issue with the difficulty scaling of the bosses. The first half of the game is quite easy. Even when you unlock hard mode and New Game Plus, they really don't present much of a challenge. The first time I fought them, I was just sitting, waiting for a phase change or a big scary move or something, but they just fell over and died. It was a little disappointing. Though towards the end, it definitely picked up and I got what I was after. The encounters got more tense, big scary moves that required some practice showed up, and the last few bosses, kind of out of nowhere, got super tanky, to where even your special moves or critical blows deal near no damage to them. Unfortunately, there's no boss challenge mode, which is a shame, but I do hear it's being worked on. Outside of this normal action RPG experience, they also tried some new things. There are 2 mandatory dungeons that, for hand-waving reasons, your sword simply does not work. And conveniently, there is an incredible amount of ammo boxes around, so you must play the game like a third-person horror shooter. These areas had ranged combat, tons of jump scares, puzzles, some interesting and some not, platforming, sometimes too much platforming, and big boss finales at the end, all while maintaining the quality from the main experience. I was again shocked that even this aspect of the game felt worthwhile. Now, I play all of these RPG games, and these segments usually aren't worth doing at all. So again, I give Shift Up a lot of credit here. The game mostly follows a linear level design. There's pathways through city streets, sewers, underground facilities, and there's optional paths that have chests or upgrade materials that will reward you for exploring. The areas are distinct enough that I wasn't at all fatigued by a lack of variety. The open world, on the other hand, is a post-apocalyptic, desolate wasteland. So the gameplay and design reflects that. It's big, and it's mostly empty. There are still some areas of interest, lots of side quests, monsters, and most importantly, fishing holes, which I highly recommend you seek out. But still, purposely or not, the wasteland is still a wasteland, and it's kinda empty. For this style of game, I personally feel combat and gameplay are the most important aspects, which is why the final grade will be influenced most by all the great things the devs have done that I just mentioned. However, story, characters, voice acting, and music are also part of the equation. The game's director, Kim Hyung-tae, very publicly stated that Stellar Blade is an homage to Nier Automata's themes and aesthetics. The character, story, music, world, the concept of a scantily clad lady with a big sword and drone, all Nier. Which isn't a bad thing, as Nier is pretty much universally lauded by its fans, and even critics liked it. And they did really well on the gameplay side of this homage. They added their own flair, they tried new things, and in my opinion, improved the formula greatly. But for the story, there was no real alteration. Certainly no improvement. It's just a poor facsimile. It's a dumbed-down copy of the smart kid's homework. So someone else wrote their story for them, and all they did is present it in a worse way. To be clear, it's not so much worse that I think it's a bad story. It's just, this was the layup portion of design, and then they bungled it up. To compound things further, the writing for the characters and the voice acting is atrocious in English.
Now, get ready. I'll be supporting with the drone.
Now, get ready. I'll be supporting with the drone.
We can admire the scenery later. We have a job to do here.
We can admire the scenery later. We have a job to do here.
And no, it's not because of lore reasons that almost every character has no personality or emotion or any apparent interest in anything they are doing ever. Plus, simply explaining why something is bad doesn't make it any less bad.
I'm Kasim, the hairstylist.
Hair.
I style your hair so you feel better and confident. Your hair looks great. It's full of potential. But that potential is hidden at the moment. That's why I said it is dull.
Is that so? Are you saying you can make my hair less dull?
Lily and a few others are voiced in an entirely different way as well, which just makes the rest of the main characters look even worse by comparison. It was actually so bad that I looked up the voice actors. And they're actually talented people who have had good performances elsewhere. So it's got to be the script and direction from Shift Up that did them no favors. Having your voice actors emulate heavily sedated Home Assistant AI voices was not the direction I would have chosen. Now, I will say that I'm about done with my New Game Plus run in Korean. And again, it just makes the English version look so much worse. Even if you don't understand Korean, it's still so easy to pick up the tension, the excitement, and emotion in these voices. The script is still really bad, but you can just kind of close your eyes to be rid of it if you want. Look, I get that they're a Korean company, so naturally that version was going to be better. But if you don't have the staff, or the talent, or weren't even going to try, you should have just left English out of the game. For a huge portion of their customers, English was going to be how they'd play given the option. So this is unexcusable. The music of the game is pretty good, and is again, kind of just a copy of Nier. They even hired the Nier composer to do much of the soundtrack, and they did get the same great quality. It's not exactly my style, but it is still pleasant, and I think most people will find tracks that they enjoy, especially some certain boss tracks. In the end, this is a much better game than I assumed it was going to be. And I don't think that my assumptions were entirely unfair. After all, this is a mobile booby gotcha game developer that's trying to break into the AAA hardcore action RPG space for their first time by copying Nier's story and themes as boobily as possible. I was certainly expecting all style and no substance, but that's just not the case. And it's kind of like finding out your local Hooters has a Michelin-starred kitchen. It's befuddling, to say the least. An absolute ton could have gone wrong here, but for the most part, and the important parts at that, they did very well. I may not have liked the story they copied then presented to me, and the characters are memorable for either the wrong reasons or for other reasons. But the gameplay here is truly special, and I kept wanting to play more. I am going to give Stellar Blade an 8 out of 10. It's pretty great stuff, and I'm really excited to see what Shift Up comes up with next. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of this rapid-fire review. Let me know what you thought of Stellar Blade in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next Angry Joe Show.